Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Today, joining me on Beach FM General Election Show is Gordon Marshall, an independent running for Mana. Gordon, welcome to the studio.
Hello.
How are you today?
All right, enjoying the rain.
Good. We like the rain. Gordon, I'm detecting not a New Zealand accent there. Where are you from and when did you move to New Zealand?
Oh, wow, yeah. We sort of moved around a bit.
Yeah.
In one way or another. Started off, I had 15 years, give or take, in Liverpool.
Liverpool?
Yeah, a place called Wallasey.
Oh my gosh.
It's just across the water, so technically a plastic scouser in many ways, for those in the know listening. And then my mum bought a sweet shop. And unfortunately, she got a sweet shop at the time when the superstores were starting to come into neighbourhoods and build it up. So unfortunately, after about, I don't know, a year or so, maybe a year and a half, it sort of went under.
Yeah.
And we got 3 black bags and sent to live with my dad in the middle of Scotland.
Wow.
A place called Lochgilphead. I mean, it's about 100 miles west of Glasgow. So it was a culture shock going from Liverpool to a town or village of 3,000 people.
Yeah.
Where everybody knew each other and all the doors were open, so it was like being back in the 70s as a kid again.
It's pretty sweet, actually.
There was a lot of that really, really nice sort of edge to it. Everyone was friendly, everybody sort of knew each other. You left your car running when you got out of it in the middle of the town.
Yeah.
Because no one was going to come and take it. There was nowhere to go.
We're going to go.
At the end of the day, it's 2 roads in, 2 roads out, and that was the end of it. And then, there were just some of the things I saw there, I tried to ignore. It was like the city was coming there in terms of the culture of the kids and things. So I went to Glasgow for 13 years and picked up a wife and some children and things like this.
Picked up a wife.
As you usually do, or she picked me up. I'm not sure which way that one turned out. But and then we ended up... I knew something was wrong then. I had no interest in politics whatsoever.
Yeah.
None. You just couldn't drag me on the subject. It was impossible. And I could see something was wrong with the world, and we just said, should we go and try and live somewhere else? And my wife was like, yeah, what the hell, let's go for it, 2 kids at the time, let's do it. So we came to New Zealand.
So you picked the
15 years
opposite end of the world to come to?
Well, yeah, when you see something's going wrong, you sort of look at the other end of the world, that even it's got a bit of culture in it as well, so you think, oh, well, maybe there is still a bit of a culture that's hanging on to people and not essentially just letting people fend for themselves.
Yeah.
In one way or another. So, yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting journey to get to here, and it was about, sort of 10 years ago, I suddenly went, oh, I really should start paying attention to this. My family's lives may actually depend on it in the future.
Yeah. So currently a house husband, so that's giving you a little bit of time to focus on, what's going on at the moment. But before that, what sort of professional background did you have?
I took 20 years as an analyst programmer. Mm-hmm. So... what would I say? I would speak to businesses, find out what they actually wanted with regards to computer systems, have a look to see if their businesses actually had the information, whether they were capable of capturing it, whether it was actually going to give them what they wanted, and so on and so forth. And just basically bounced around for 20 years, near enough. Yeah. Just trying to wrap my head around it. And it was constantly evolving, and it got annoying eventually. And unfortunately, a lot of heavy business culture started coming in as well, where, once upon a time you could have a bit of a laugh with your mates and stuff. It was very hard to have a chat with somebody, if you like, when the pressure was on in the building. There was always somebody sitting there riding you. And at, mid-40s, I just got fed up with that. I thought, this is impossible. Yeah. So I did actually quit work about 5 years ago, as my wife was starting to come back into the workplace.
Sure.
Partially because we just couldn't face, was it 13 weeks of school holidays, 4 weeks each of holiday for me and my wife? Yeah. So that's 5.5 weeks, give or take, that you've got to spend on the kids. Yeah. Or for somebody else to look after your kids. And you and your wife never actually get to spend any time together either with the kids as a family. So a lot of these things sort of started playing on my mind. So we sort of tried to shift things a bit so that I could take a bit of time off and actually be there for when the kids are sick. Yeah. Instead of having to take another day off work, and, they accumulate when you've got 3 kids at the end of the day. So,
From there you've decided you're going to go out on your own and maybe try for a bit of a seat. Why on your own? Why not pick a party?
There's no party that represents anywhere near anything that I'm talking about. I mean, from my perspective, I look at it from the perspective of the evidence and go from there. And anything that sort of ignores the evidence then becomes human opinion on a matter.
Are you talking about housing or health?
Everything, absolutely.
The environment?
Well, it's all connected.
Yeah.
I mean, we need, if you take a look at the debate last night, is national candidate is essentially saying, hey, look, we want you to go out and spend, and we'll put more money in infrastructure in this. And this is basically how our economy has evolved over the last however many hundreds or thousands of years, depending on how far back you actually want to go and take a look at it. And if you want to, deal with housing, then you've got to make sure the rest of your industry is kicking hard enough that it's got an abundance of money to then put into housing and people to put into housing to bring the housing up a level or two. So there's no, in many ways, you've got to solve it all, really, before you have a crack at any one thing. Because governments have a habit of rubbing Peter to pay Paul. Yeah. So one project will disappear that's actually useful 3 years later because the funding gets... And there's no consistency in that way.
So what would you bring to the table? What would you... if someone came up to you in the street and says, OK, I might vote for you, tell me in a minute what you could do for the... or why you're passionate about the Mana electorate. Is it Mana or Turkey?
It's just the Mana electorate.
Mana,
I literally live on the border.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
It's quite funny. It's split across the road. And for me, it is a basic question of human survival. As churlish as it sounds in many ways, when you actually take a look at the evidence, we are massively overusing this planet. And this is, the evidence that industry are providing to say, hey, we used X amount of resource this year. And someone's collating all this information and going, oh, my God, we're using 1.7 sustainable planets every year.
It's pretty scary.
Anything more than one is actually suicide.
Yeah.
When you look at it from that perspective. So, that's really where I start.
It is a theme for most parties that we've heard come in. Hopefully people are going to start to take some notice on that. Have you got any ideas on how we can curb some of that? I know it's all intertwined. It's a little bit hard to succinctly...
Do you know, oddly enough, there is a one-size-that-fits-all for this. As bizarre as it sounds.
Uh-oh.
I know, exactly. Well, I call it virtualising production. So take the 1.7 sustainable planets, for argument's sake. If you take a look at that in its own light and say, right, what are you telling me evidence that I need to do? Then the evidence is saying you need to stop approximately 50% of your activity to become sustainable, because we've got some ecological debt and everything that we'd have to repay. Now, that essentially means crashing your economy. That's technological unemployment on steroids. Same with COVID. That's COVID again on steroids. This is people going out of work left, right and centre. Yeah. Especially, you're taking half of it away to play with. You're not going to have half of it to play with. People aren't going to have jobs. So I would virtualise the economy. And basically what that means is we would continue all of the activity going, but we would do it as a dream, if you like. That's probably about the best example I can give, is where you would pay for everything that we are budgeted to pay for at the moment. Take a look at all of our businesses. The whole of New Zealand as a whole, we are going to produce X amount of something throughout the year. And we know exactly what that is because the businesses are budgeted to do that so that they get the correct amount of profit to come in and so on and so forth. And obviously I've now lost completely the thread of what we were talking about because it's such a really big thing. I end up going off all over the place to explain something to bring it back again.
Well, it's a big question.
Virtualising
production.
Virtual. Yeah. So, virtualising production basically means that, let me give you an example. I could take a look at your bank account history potentially for the last 10 years and predict exactly what you are going to buy next year, give or take, maybe 90% of what you're going to buy. So if I took 100% of your salary and everybody else's salary and said to you, I guarantee that you're going to get the basics, but you're not going to get the fancy stuff because we actually have to stop producing the fancy stuff for sustainability purposes.
Have we seen some of that? Sorry to interrupt your flow there, but through COVID,
yes, absolutely.
There is sort of a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. Although you're a little bit scared that once it's all sort of done and dusted, we'll go back to our bad habits or old habits. That we actually don't need as much as what we're consuming, and we're doing things like we want to make our own bread. We don't have to have everything in a plastic bag. We want to grow our own vegetables. We don't want to be in the car so much. Let's get out and walk some more. Yeah. And did the planet not having a little bit of a deep breath and clear out some of their lungs a little bit because we weren't consuming as much? Is this sort of, if listeners were trying to get an idea, is this a little taste of what you're talking about?
To an extent, yeah. I mean, like you say, it grows arms and legs absolutely everywhere. The planet is fundamental to everything and everybody. Carl Sagan has a great saying on it. He just says, anything else you're interested in is not going to happen if you can't drink the water and eat the food and breathe the air.
Yeah.
And, these are the basic things. And our parties currently are saying growth, 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 jobs, 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 growth, growth, growth. And that is completely counterintuitive to what the evidence is saying. It's saying, no, you need less jobs and less growth. Now, as you say, COVID actually threw up a very good way of kind of explaining this in many ways, because we ended up with two categories of jobs. We ended up with essential jobs and non-essential jobs. And I think I heard on the debate last night something like 1.7 million people were being subsidised by the government, which is, as you say, that's essentially virtualising production.
Yeah.
But instead of direct subsidy, we would be looking at what we were actually going to spend, because we know it if we look at all of these reports, what we were going to produce and da-da-da-da-da. Get rid of the stuff that you don't want to produce and just keep paying the people as if it had been produced. So the money will flow through the economy as it was predicted to go through. And if we have, say, a pandemic in the middle of it, it won't matter.
Yeah.
Because the money is still going through the economy because we're spending it virtually. This is what we would have done, but this is what we actually need to do. So you could end up with, say, 300,000 people unemployed all of a sudden in New Zealand as non-essential staff, but they would be fully paid, which means they can pay their bills, their rent, their house and everything, because they were going to get fully paid. We're budgeted to do it. We were just going to destroy a bit of planet to get it done.
Yeah.
So the basic idea is these guys are then going to be sitting there at home fully paid, doing nothing.
Hopefully growing some vegetables.
Well, this is the thing, is what are they going to do? How many of them are gardeners? How many of them are glazers? How many of them are painters? How many of these guys now don't need to drive away from their street to actually do their job, let alone to go from Carpety into Wellington? Because there's more money for me in Wellington. Well, okay, you get the money for the job, get a painter in the street in Wellington to do the job instead.
Yeah.
Because that's what was kind of going to happen. We're just changing the personnel, not moving them up and down the highway, which again saves on fuel and wear and tear and...
Yeah, it's a thing that's coming through, and we need it to go. We need it to happen globally as well.
This is the thing: is 50% of 1.7 sustainable planets is an entire planet worth of people stopping doing what they're doing. And the conversation hasn't even started yet. I mean, this is me really trying to get a conversation started that it's overdue. The evidence has said, you're 50 years late with this conversation. I mean, literally, we're 50 years late and some late with this conversation. Because it's expedient for our political parties at the moment to keep people talking economy and jobs, because, as you said earlier, it's kind of all we know. We haven't had to look at things in a slightly different way. Where we do, I can promise you, God, it looks so different. As Daniel Dennett said, there's no polite way to explain to somebody that they've dedicated their lives to an illusion. And I shattered mine. All of them. Well, not all of them. There's still plenty to come. But I hope they're not as bad as the last lot were. Because it pushes you to an edge of something that you just... It's hard to see hope absolutely anywhere, because people are just not talking about the right things.
Yeah,
air quotes, right things, if you know what I mean.
It's a tricky time, yes, and there's a lot of people who are doing things that they wouldn't normally do and questioning what they have been doing. Absolutely. Very interesting conversation. Yeah, we could go on we could have that conversation for
as we said,
a very long time.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you some really tricky questions now.
Go for it.
Really tricky. You'll need it when you're in politics.
Okay.
Would you prefer city or country? See, told you they were tricky.
Neither and both.
Neither and both. I understand that. Vanilla or chocolate?
Chocolate.
Mac or PC?
PC, just because I'm trained on PC, and Macs are always... Anyway.
Coffee or tea?
Neither.
Cat or dog?
Dog.
Soccer or rugby? Now, be careful.
Football. Call it soccer. Oh, my God, no.
I knew I'd get a reaction there. That's why I put the question.
I know. Everyone does, So it's like soccer, Gordon, that twinkle in their eyes. You can see the rage building. Football.
So we haven't converted you to rugby yet?
I was a rugby fan many years ago.
Yeah.
When they started messing around with the rules so that people could roll over holding the ball and then put it back. When I was taught, as soon as you're down on the ground, you let go of the ball. It sort of destroyed the game for me a bit.
Are you talking... hang on. Don't confuse. Is this league you're talking about?
No, I'm talking union.
Oh, right, okay.
And they take the ball and they land on the ground.
Yeah.
As soon as you're on the ground, we were taught, you put the ball down. Now they grab it, they hold it, they roll a bit, they twist a bit, they put their arm out, they drop it down the back.
A little bit of Hollywood going on now.
And, for me, as much as it's nice to see sides retain possession...
Yeah.
You know, as soon as you're on the ground, your line should be there to support the guy. If you've got to give him 5 seconds before everybody lands on him, I think it's a bit unfair. So it kind of took the sheen off it a bit for me. But I've always been a Liverpool fan, so football's always been the first love.
That would be hard to take football out of a Liverpool man, that's for sure.
Totally, and yeah.
Well, Gordon, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the General Election Show today. Good luck with everything going forward.
Thank you for having me, Kathy. Yes, absolutely. Let's see if we can get a conversation started.
Okay. Thanks, Gordon.
Cheers.
106.3 Beach FM.